Good morning. Good morning. You're kind. Good morning. So this morning we're going to rebirth some traditions here. Open, honest, and civil communications will be the first. The second will be exploring together our future and figuring out how to do that in community throughout the next couple of years. I want to start today by asking Father Memo to come up and offer our invocation.
Good morning. According to the prophet Jeremiah, God constantly says to the human person, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, plans to give you a future full of hope." At the beginning of this process of our new strategic plan, I call the DePaul community to the silence of imagination and to the silence of wonder. Do not be alone in the silence. Let us find each other, gathering a collective imagination that can help us to design the DePaul we want for today and tomorrow. In mutuality and interdependence, let us all overcome small selfishness, apathy, and indifference. I will show you the way of wisdom. May the way of wisdom guide us. May the spirit of wisdom, present in all cultures, in all religious and spiritual traditions, in all philosophical convictions, be with us, guide us, help us to come together, to heal our institutional fabric, to dream together, to always wonder and imagine in community. DePaul is a community gathered together for the sake of the mission. The mission is our common place where we meet. The original intuition on the heart of Vincent DePaul is the very foundation in which DePaul is grounded. At the beginning of this process of the new strategic plan, I invite this community to rejoice, to celebrate, and to embrace the permanent and universal calling of our mission in solidarity with this city and with our world. God of all faces, God of all cultures, God of a diverse world, God always present, guide us with your love, with your patience, with your kindness. Amen. Yesterday, celebrating our Foundation Day, we began a new tradition, the share coin. Some of us are already sharing a coin of recognition and thanksgiving to people who are so committed with our common spirit, with our mission. And I want to invite all of you to share the coin. If you have no one to share yet, you can go to the front desk in Lincoln Park campus of the Student Center, room 311, or in 14 East Jackson Suite 800. This is a time for us to connect, to say thank you to each other, and to recognize how the mission and the integration of our mission is happening in so many places and in so many different ways. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Manny. Oh, you took the bell? That's what you thought.
Now he is going to command us with a bell. This is the bell of command.
It's kind of like a, you will pay attention. So before we start, I want to recognize the amazing activities that happened yesterday on the 125th anniversary. The buildings were lit up in our colors. We were all over the news. We were in our communities, and Chicago got to celebrate with us. The extent that our outreach, the earned media that we got was unbelievable. And I can't tell you the pride I had in that day, seeing DePaul be back in its community and connected to it. And all of you that had something to do with that, thank you for that. Thank you. We also raised a little over $7 million by midnight last night, which is a new record. To the advancement staff, many of whom are here, to the marketing communication folks, to the student life groups, who all put on these events to make sure we celebrated together, to raise those dollars, I can't thank you enough. The results stand for themselves, but the concept of us being together on that day is the metaphor I want to extend today. The support from you, from faculty, staff, our alumni and our family got us to that point. And so congratulate yourselves for a wonderful day yesterday. I also want to say that I think we're joined by about 200 or so people online. And so for those of you online, if you want to start submitting your Q&A now, we'll be able to gather them up for when I'm done with my 3.5-hour talk here. You think I'm joking? I want to start with some thoughts in this moment. I'd like to make sure that these conversations are a regular thing. I want to make sure that as we move through these kind of turbulent, unknown, and difficult times, that we come together to process it as a group, and that we do so with grace and civility, and we do so with the trust in each other that our intentions are towards the mission for our students and for the collective of DePaul. That there is nobody I've met in just 6 months of being here that has a personal agenda. Every single one of us is devoted to the future of DePaul. And if we enter into this conversation moving forward with that as the baseline, we'll end up on the other side of this in very good straits. Also, this is the beginning of our work. Everything I talk about today comes from a knowledge that there are many more items that need to be fixed, not addressed, fixed. I have a bias to this action, and I want to make sure that we don't perpetuate the conversation about the problem, but rather address their solutions. We need to do that together. We need to be intentional about our efforts, and we need to be brave and bold in that conversation. As I've said earlier in the other two conversations we've had, I can see the discomfort and the pain. I can see the morale issues that exist in our current situation. I also can see the fact that none of us want to stay there. None of us want to be resident in that pain for much longer. In order to do that, we have to collectively muster the strength to move through this to a more comfortable community and a better sense of our quality of life. I also recognize that some of the promises of the past have been vacated, and I'm asking for a bit of a reset here, that we find a way to believe in our paths forward and to create trust in the motivation of all of our community and the knowledge that what we put into place will be a pact between the administration and the community to make sure that we can find our path forward. So let's begin. What you have up here is a word dump of all of our conversations and the survey I sent out before this meeting. These words here are combined to show us what the issues are, what our questions are, what we need to discuss as a community. My goal today is to address as many of those as I can in this presentation, but then provide the opportunity for questions and answers to go through the rest that are in your mind through this agenda. Some of them are about our path forward and our future and the design of DePaul, and some of them are about the moment that we're in right now. And because diversity, equity, inclusion has been a keystone to the conversation that we've been having, I wanted to call some of those moments out here today. And then the last, we'll spend as much time as we need talking through the questions that you have moving forward. I tried to fit as much of these words, as much as these thoughts into this agenda, understanding I probably was not able to fit them all. We'll handle those in Q&A. So the first item we need to talk about is our efforts around diversity, equity, and inclusion. On Monday, I'll release a more thorough document outlining our approach, the details of which would take a significant amount of this conversation. And so I want you to know what I'm about to talk about are the high-level concepts, and Monday, the details will be produced for us to read. So much good is going on right now in the efforts of diversity, equity, and inclusion. The retreat we had just a few months ago unveiled to me the quality and the magnitude of the work that we were doing. It also unveiled the need for a coordinated effort at the university structure to enable that work to continue and to make it as powerful as it could and make sure that it's addressing the impact and the change that we want to see versus only describing and talking about the questions and the problems. To be sure, no one alive today is responsible for the horrible acts that happened 100 years ago, but we are responsible for how we respond to the long tail effects of those acts that are present in our community today. Those actions plague our community in different ways. They prevent completion. They prevent the community that we all aspire to be. And I want to make sure that instead of simply addressing it and talking about it and identifying the problem, we find paths to engage and solve and move forward. Lastly, be sure that what I'm about to show you does not suffice. It is not sufficient. It's not an answer. It's a start. It's a starting point and I hope you see as concrete evidence that we are dedicated to this topic, that we are pushing forward in ways that could redesign our community so that every person here can achieve to their highest and best while they're with us. When I first arrived, I received a lot of information about the various needs of our affinity groups around campus. I also became aware of how frustrated these become because there was little progress to show that the requests they were asking for were being delivered, that the change they sought was there, that the quality of life they deserve was being implemented. With that communication that's coming out on Monday, we'll start to craft and fund our plans to move ahead. These opportunities are only a start. These groups are not everybody on campus, but they are the ones that presented their concerns to me in the first 5 months. The circles in the middle show that there's opportunity for more groups to identify and articulate the concerns that they have, and for us to create impactful programs to change those realities. Not yet. There are systemic changes that need to occur. You will see on the Monday letter that comes out that we will address religious intolerance. I've asked Liz Ortiz, Jean Memo, to begin the conversations with our community about the religious intolerance that exists on our campus, the goals that we have to engage that, and a path forward to ensure that nobody feels marginalized because of their religious background on campus. I've also asked them to prepare a report back to us by the end of the spring term, so in June, for us to engage the changes that need to occur. I'm sorry, that's quarter. I'll get that within the next year or so. We also need to re-engage our quest to serve as an HSI institution, Hispanic Serving Institution. There's a lot of work done to understand what that would be, and we need to bring that to life, implement the services and the opportunities that are required to serve the almost 25% of our population that that come from Hispanic or Latinx populations. The same with the ANAPISI certification. The work done to get us over the finish line and make sure that those services are there to provide support for the students is critical, and for our faculty and staff. I'm going to increase the number of presidential fellows regarding diversity so that we can connect with our research and our administrative work and identify paths forward in these spaces. The work that's been done by previous presidential fellows has been remarkable and has also shown us that there are paths forward, and has shown us the work that needs to be done in order to become that institution that we want. We're also going to accept and implement many of the recommendations delivered by the Black Equity Initiative and the task force studying the relationship of the Vincentians to enslaved individuals. This work is simply remarkable and showcases times in our history when we veered away from our mission. It also shows us evidence that those times in the history have relevance and impact in the work we do today. Recognizing those times requires that we do research into our history to understand when we veered from that mission. There has been some of that to date. There's been facts shown that we have in our 30s and 40s and 50s performed minstrel shows in blackface. There are times when we have placed limits on African American students and their admissions to this university. There are times when we've corrected that course, but there's also evidence that we have continued work to do. I am deeply sorry for those moments. And I recognize that there's still remnants of racism on our campus. Our job is to eliminate it. To do that, we'll fund a scholar to do research in the archives to understand the background, the impact, and the effect that we had in that space. We'll raise money to create a display for our archives to be a permanent opportunity for all to see the experiences that we've created, the opportunities that we've lost, and the points when we missed our mission in order to move past that. There was a request to create a full-time position in Liz Ortiz's shop to coordinate the equity programming at DePaul, and I'm happy to announce that Xuan Young, I think way in the back, will be promoted into that position and do that work. We'll also focus our intellectual efforts to understand the role that debt has in informing access and completion for our students. You'll see in a moment, the achievement gaps are extraordinary, and if we don't cure those, the elements of racism will prevail in our community. These are the data. You probably can't see any of this, so I'll explain it. This row here are our white Caucasian students. The blue line represents their first-year retention rates, so 89 to 87% in the last couple years. This tan line represents their 4-year graduation rate, and the red line represents their 6-year graduation rate. This line is the Asian Pacific Islander, this line is Hispanic Latinx, this is African American, and this is multiracial. It's not very difficult to see the differences in achievement in those spaces. This is the case with faculty representation, with staff representation, and we need to solve for this, not just understand and engage. This is only one representation of a problem that we will solve. This is one of our biggest obstacles to relevance and value going forward. I think it was Martin Luther King who said, the first thing you do when the lights go out is acknowledge that the lights went out. The lights are out. I wouldn't come to this understanding without one person in particular who made it very clear in my interview process and after that this was a focus that we needed to be on, that it had to move from discussion and conversation to action and solution. And I want to recognize that person right now with the first presidential coin that I'm giving out, Dr. Valerie Johnson. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So to move into the next conversation on our agenda is to talk about our current situation. And I want to pause here for a moment to say that our problems are not the same as other institutions in this country. My own alma mater, which had 2,800 students when I went to it, is now down to 900 students. Its discount rate is 78%. Its endowment is about $148 million. It has a very different road forward. Its questions are about survival. Our questions are about priority. We're in a very, very privileged place to have 23,000 students, to be in a city that cares about what we do and is strong enough to support the employment needs and the connections to our curriculum and to our service work. I want to take a moment to recognize that privileged place so that we can change our efforts from focusing only on the budget cutting ourselves to greatness into thinking about how we design our future so that we can prove the value, we can continue to serve our students, our communities, and each other, and become, as our biggest goal, the national model for higher education. There are few institutions in the country that can do that. We are blessed to be one of them. We have the responsibility now to engage that and move forward. There are tons of external forces bearing down on us. They really are. That's not the one. There. Those are the external forces. You probably can't read them, but all of these forces coming down on the university are changing the way people view the quality of higher education in America. There is a change in the way that political and public people look at us. They distrust higher education at greater rates. There's a belief now that higher education is an individual good, not a personal or society value. That was never the case. Think of the land-grant institutions. Those were all for the betterment of society. There are a ton of opportunities now in corporations like Google and Facebook or Meta or whatever it's called, where you can get trained to do the momentary job instead of be trained to be the citizen to engage the questions of our day. We are siloed in ways that doesn't make sense to the students coming in, doesn't necessarily make sense to the corporations that are trying to solve interdisciplinary problems, and will require us to think about our own structures if we're going to match the problems of today based on these environmental changes, which were not there 10 years ago. So the way we structured, the way we do our work is wonderful for the environment that was. That environment is gone, and we've got to address this in our design. Student loan debt is crippling. And the government Department of Ed is now beginning to change their thinking about student loans and whether you can have a student loan or offer student loans if your students aren't graduating and if your students aren't getting jobs in fields that provide salaries to live on. This is critical for us to think about because there's at least, I'm gonna make up a number as a president, at least $40 million of student aid here. Maybe Sumitra can help me better understand that. The declining value in higher education here is the biggest nut to crack. For too long, the institutions that mattered abrogated their responsibility to define to the world why higher education mattered. And when the conversation shifted, we were left holding the muddy end of the stick. We have to figure out a way now to articulate and show, not just describe, but show what we do matters. We know it matters in our world. We can point to the cases of students becoming something that couldn't become otherwise, to communities being engaged in ways they couldn't otherwise. We need to show that to the world. That's a responsibility of our university going forward. Those that don't figure out how to move from budget cutting themselves to greatness to solving these questions will be, at best, irrelevant, and at worst, out of business. We are in a terrific place, even though there are pressures that we're feeling. We are in a terrific place to design our future, to answer these questions, to continue our work, and also to promote the mission in ways we know we can. So you know that we've been talking about budget deficits. You know FY23 has provided some pressure and some pain for us going forward. I want to tell you and show you the process that happens, because it's new to me, but I hope it offers some explanation for why decisions are made at different points throughout the year. So if you can't read this, which you probably can't, these are just the categories inside of the budget that we send back and forth between us. It's what we agree to with the board, it's what we agree to with one another. I call it the cow. If you were at the inauguration, you'll remember that the cow kind of runs away from the storm. This is the cow approach. Wait to see what we get. If we have enough, terrific. If we don't, we cut ourselves. We can't continue to do that year after year because the gap will continue to grow. And the gap will become too big to have these incremental cuts help us get to stability. And we're missing the opportunity to access $20 million a year to invest in our future. Because that $20 million that comes from the endowment is immediately spent on operating deficits. If we find a way to cure that, we have access to pitch ideas to the board for $20 million. In October, the board eliminated the RTP, per request of the conversation that the Council of the Whole, but the Faculty Council, Executive Committee, and Faculty Council had with administration. That's their vote that if we can figure ourselves out, they're willing to invest in these things that matter to us. That is one way to become relevant. That's one way to extend our mission, and that's one way to get out of the malaise we feel at the moment, the arguments we have at the moment. So in July, we filed a budget that was about $100,000 to the bad, which is essentially even. And the board took that. In October, we realized that our net tuition and revenue had declined, essentially, and that we went from $543 million that we expected to $519 million. That's just a fact. It's not anybody applying the desire to put, like Scrooge McDuck, all the money in a bank and hold on to it. It's a reality of where our students are coming, how much our students can afford. It's an indicator, perhaps, that price is broken in certain places because our net tuition revenue declines. The answer to that is value. What value do we provide to the world, to our students, to make them want to come? What distinctions do we have that we can fundraise for to enable those who want to be here and who can be here but don't have the resources to be here, can be here? And how do we free ourselves up to use some of that $20 million to be able to help with those academic distinctions, differentiation, and also student access? I want you to know that every month this gets updated. And every month we look at it and say, how close are we to being good? And so in October, when we looked at our projections, we were 11.5 million off, which does a lot of things if you end the year that way. It's the equivalent of, at the end of the month, bouncing checks. We have some debt. We have very little debt for an institution our size. But if we get downgraded on our credit, we have different realities in how we pay that debt back, or perhaps get it called. In December, we realized that through the work that was being done, that deficit had changed to 8.6 million. And we're convinced now, where's Sherry? Make sure we're convinced now that the efforts we had to put in place will get us to a point where we're back to at least this at the end of the year. That exercise shouldn't be our future. I don't want to have this conversation again. I want to be talking about how we use the surplus dollars to invest in ourselves, to invest in our students, to invest in our mission. And I think we can get there through a conversation about priority and growth, to put our mindset into design instead of austerity. This is difficult stuff, and it's what kind of brought tension to the world in the past 4 or 5 years. You have all provided me the opportunity to come in very pure ways to engage the conversation about how to move forward. And so my second coin today, for being a leader in that space, making sure that mission and intention are part of the conversation we have, goes to Dr. Sonia Soltero as a head of faculty council. Thank you. Thank you. It's a gift to have working conversations between the leadership groups that exist, staff council, faculty council, administration, the board. We are crafting our path forward back to trust, back to engagement, back to civility. And I'm grateful to you and the leadership of faculty council and faculty council for just allowing that reset button to be hit. Thank you. So this is the cow future. This is what happens if we act like cows. That sounds horrible, but you know what I mean. This is kind of the moment we're in right here, where we're still able to affect break even by giving ourselves little paper cuts throughout the year. The plan going forward shows, and this is taking the existing scenarios we have in the budget and just moving them forward, shows a gap that gets created that simply can't be covered by the same mechanisms that we put in place. The questions you have to me, I'm sure, about will there be layoffs in this scenario of the cow, the answer is probably yes. The good news is that this hasn't happened yet. The other good news is that I feel our community ready, looking in the same direction, ready to row together. If we do that, then we become the buffalo. We make some difficult decisions here, which take this line and slope it downward, and this line and slope it upward, allowing us to reinvest whatever difference there is back into us. I told you earlier that some of the promises feel like they've been vacated. One of the promises we make is that we reinvest everything back into ourselves. We reinvest things into the areas that are mission-based and can't produce additional revenue by themselves, and we focus on making sure that mission, not spreadsheet, rules our conversation going forward. So the way forward is through this notion that anything is possible, but it is all a connected puzzle. So one piece can be more important, is a keystone piece, and other pieces might not be. That's the priority conversation. How do we manage to do the best we can for mission for the programs that we manage to have and offer through the university? It is possible to think of merit increases in the range of 5% a year. If that's the first thing we identify as being important to this community, that's the first thing we put into the budget and figure out how we manage to that over time. It's also possible to think about the size of our administration and our faculty, the size of the university, what we do with our endowment draw, how we generate revenue through philanthropy, how we manage our undergraduate retention, how continuing education becomes a revenue source to invest in the processes that we have, how we expand to what I would call blue oceans, places where there's not a lot of competition, instead of to keep securing the red ocean situations that we're in, where there's a lot of activity around very little food. This new program creation is an area we need to focus on. And there's two ways to do that. This interdisciplinary concept that we talked about before, and the development of programs that make sense to faculty or that make sense to the industry, to the marketplace, or to the opportunity that we exist. This newfound connection between staff, faculty, and administration is what will allow us to have this conversation and these conversations in meaningful ways. They're not easy. You're prioritizing in this space. But I think we can come to an understanding about what's most important for our institution, for us, for our students, for our mission, and then move through the conversation about how that impacts everything we do financially over time. My job is to put all this together in a model for us so that we can have an interactive conversation about what happens if one of those puzzle pieces becomes more important. If you want to do every 1% of a merit increase, I'm going to miss this. Sherry here? She's probably online. It's like 2 million, 2.5 million. Every 1% increase in retention is net tuition comes in about $1.4 million higher. So those are opportunities to see your income grow. They're also consistent with mission. We could, for example, decide that we're going to transfer term to tenure faculty. Just a cost. To do 40, I think Selma told me to do 40 is about Where's Selma? About $1.5 million. Nothing about the size of that problem scares me if we're prioritizing and figuring out what's important to us. It scares me if it comes to us as a single item issue in the cow field. I hope you know what I mean. In the field where we're just budget cutting ourselves to greatness. So here are some ideas about our areas to grow. And the last piece here is the structure for which we can go through in order to have this conversation about prioritization. One blue ocean for us is India. Right now, we receive a lot of students from India. We don't do a lot in India. And India is a marketplace that has opportunity for us. It matches educationally in areas that we're strong. It also has a demographic population that could be friendly to connections with us. It's also, Tatum, an area where continuing ed and the population is different and can be addressed by the work we do in that space. I don't know what the programs are that connect with India. I don't know how we figure out the structures around developing this yet. That's our work to come. The job of identifying where we go is simply a market-driven exercise. The second is to begin to show our story more publicly. This begins to get us to a conversation about why our value matters, what our value is, how the impact our education has on the students that come through. What you can't see here again is that this is a way to construct and design the digital presence of the university in a new way so that the stories are told, not just described. The exercise that made me think of this was I went to CineSpace and saw the students in action, I saw the professionals in action, and I left wanting to be a film producer. Yeah, no. The world doesn't need that. And then I went to show my excitement to my wife, and we sat down at the computer, and I called it up, and every bit of energy left me. Right? We described it. We said there are 500 cameras. We said we own, 10,000 square feet of space. None of that lit me up like when I was there. And so if we can find a way to show that stuff, if we can show your research, if you can take environmental science and show the world what we're doing with it, we'll be better able to both recruit our students, to tell our story, to describe our value, and answer the question of the big clouds that are running down around us. So the general idea here is that every area in the university that has a story to tell, department, academic department, administrative department, recruitment, advancement, you name it, has the ability to draw from centralized information that is brought together from all the resources we have, the primary resources that we create to show the world what we do. The decisions made are yours. They're less curated than they are now, so we're not writing everything out and putting it through editors, which means it'll be authentic, which means there'll be spelling errors. But it means the power of what we show will be there collectively. The next part is the extension of this concept of interdisciplinary education. And I'm so enamored by this in part because I don't think there's been a single person who said this is a dumb idea yet. You can raise your hand if you think it is right now. The idea here is that we can visualize the interdisciplinary work that we do to show impact in the world, to show predictive processes of what could happen if certain investments are made in different communities. This moves us from studying to showing the impact that we could see. I'll describe this in a minute for you, but this is what I want to talk about first. To me, there are 3 levels of interdisciplinary study. There's a faculty member or an administrator who sits and says, I want to do something that's in a different area than I'm trained in or that I have been in before. That is terrific work, and that happens really well here. The next is an individual or a department that connects with another individual or department to create interdisciplinary education. That also happens extremely well here. The part that doesn't is the third, which is the institutional connections between different institutions, different organizations, to impact large, huge developmental questions, societal questions that exist out there. So when we say poverty, sustainability, social computing, those are our three areas of huge impact that every one of you should be able to say, hey, I have an interest in one of those three things. If we do this right and we develop our ideas right, foundations will want to give to solve. Donors that have no interest in DePaul at the moment, but have great interest in the problems we're trying to engage, will increase our opportunity to bring in revenue to help support these programs. And this is where the board has committed a quasi-endowment of $20 million to allow us to use this spend rate on that each year to advance our work in this area. This, sitting on top of this, is the decision theater. This is a way for us to collect in visual space and physical space everybody who's concerned about a project, ask it questions, and then visualize the impact of the work we're trying to do. I've said a couple times to some of you that Rice University got a $50 million grant to study Houston. That's this, without the visualization. So if you wanted to take a $50 million grant, which we would, and apply it to the impact of what our work would have in communities, what it would do to school attainment rates, what it would do to crime rates, what it would do to incarceration rates, what it would do to food debt, all of the stuff that matter in communities. This is a way to visualize it for the politicians, for the folks that are funding these initiatives, for the community members that are going to live this initiative out. And there is so much good work in our faculty and our staff. All we need to do is connect it, put it in this room, get our data scientists to pull this together, and in the end, the metrics that will be impacted are listed below. And to get us out of the cow mentality, the things that matter here are net tuition, operating margin, our liquidity measures, student retention, student attraction. There's some research coming out of Sumitra's shop that says our students come here expecting to engage problems, not study disciplines. I'm not suggesting we do away with disciplines. I'm suggesting that we find a way to engage their intentions inside of the actions that we put in play. But this is one way to potentially get us out of arguing over the same amount of money that comes from simply increasing tuition each year on the backs of our students. So this is the initial design of the interdisciplinary concept. This is also as far as I go in my expertise. I'm just about over my skis at this point. This is where you take over. So the design here would be that these centers, this poverty, this environmental sustainability, this social computing, will become what you want it to be, based on your interests, based on our connections, based on what the corporations and the industries want, based on what we can produce if we connect our data scientists, our visualizations, our disciplinary efforts that are already in place, our curriculum development, our corporate and nonprofit engagement through philanthropy, our training and non-credit executive certificates that we can put in place. And it'll have the benefit of extending our philanthropy, of creating intellectual property that at some point could be commercialized, and creating revenue share opportunities between corporations that come into play. This structure is an empty suit. We need to work in the next year to figure out how to breathe life into it and put structure and substance to the concepts that's there. So this is how we begin the conversation, I think. We have more of these. We've already planned 43 events around campus. 15 are online, 28 are in person, and they will revolve around, these major areas that have come out of our conversations so far, including interdisciplinary education. I held diversity, equity, and inclusion separate because that is a different investment that we're going to make. And I also held sustainability on our campus as a different initiative. That's a different initiative we will take versus sustainability inside the interdisciplinary model that we have. They can connect, but we have to design that as we go forward. I hope you'll continue to have these conversations with us. I know that in the past, and currently sitting in these chairs, it's difficult to imagine a different future than we have right now. It's difficult to have conversations about the future when we're so concerned about the present. But we have to do both. We have to get through 23 and 24 in order to be happy in 25 through 3050. If we're successful, we're creating a model for student completion that benefits everybody. We're creating a model for engagement that the world will look at. We're creating satisfaction and morale increases in all of us in our community. We will know what's important to this community going forward and how we implement it. And we will be extending our mission in real ways, redefined for the issues in our society at the moment. These are massive stakes. These are difficult times, but we're the right people. Let me stop there and see if you have questions or thoughts.
All right, so we do have about 400 people online, and we're going to be taking questions from both our online audience and if you're here in person. So you are welcome to please go up to a mic. We have a mic right here by Heidi, and then there's one over here in the balcony. But while you're deciding if you're going to stand up and go to the mic, we can do an online question. So it appears with hiring freezes that we are again in a belt-tightening period, which historically has just added to workload, stress, and dysfunction. In the new design, how can we focus more on people rather than spending resources on things?
Mm-hmm. This is going to sound flippant, but it's not. We do it, right? We put first in our decision-making processes the people, our quality of life, our areas that matter. Remember the slide with the puzzle pieces? It's a question about identifying which ones of those are most important to us, and then funding those, and then seeing what the intended and unintended consequences of those are, and then making decisions as an institution to move forward. The opposite, or the alternative, is to continue to sit in the stink that we exist in now, and year after year, fight over the deficit that we see coming. It boils down to a practical matter of the values we put into our budget process and the boldness with which we can go after making decisions to invest in areas that make sense. And I can tell you right now, after the conversations of only 6 months, morale, quality of life, those things matter. We need to find out a way to invest in those.
I know we've met, but for everyone else, my name is David Hupp, and I'm with the Student Government Association. I am the senator for 4th and 5th year students, previously the senator for disabled students, and I do a lot of disabled activism on campus. And so I was very happy to see when you were talking about DEI at the beginning that you included disabled people, because this is a relatively new thing to consider disability to be a DEI issue. And historically, DePaul has not considered it to be a DEI issue. And so I was wondering if you could go into more detail about some of your vision specifically, concretely, about how to transform DePaul into something that is much more the cutting edge when it comes to treating disability as a DEI issue.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That's a great question. So in a week, I meet with Gwyneth True, who's the leader of the Accessible Future for DePaul. I might get that name wrong, but that group, with an idea towards figuring out what the questions are, what the opportunities are, what the things we need to change and engage are. We will include that in the conversation in DEI, the structure that I put up there, to make sure that we're engaging and changing and impacting those results. Thank you.
We have one more on the
Actually, we're
floor.
going to do another online question.
Thanks.
We're going to alternate here. So what efforts do you have to envision and diversify the international population so that India is not the only focus and students and faculty at DePaul can benefit from a truly diverse cultural and professional perspective?
So let me start with a conceptual answer to that. Many of the things I put up here are one example of possibilities going forward. There are many others. At some point, the president doesn't have, like right now, the president doesn't have the expertise to continue this conversation. My job is to provide the structure, the opportunity, and then the investments in them to make them happen. So if we go through a conversation about our internationalization of DePaul, it will end up being, if we're involved in correct ways, in the places that matter to the population that we serve. And so India was only a single example of an area that we could expand on, but there are many, many others. We'd figure that out as we go through the process.
Okay.
Len Jason, psychology. First, I want to kind of let you know I thought your presentation was fantastic. And really, you hit on issues going into the future, which just are so important for this institution. I've been around here for, if you can believe it, 48 years. And this is one of the more positive presentations I've heard, so thank you.
Thank you.
When you think about some of the themes of poverty, sustainability, social computing, I think about one of the big challenges for the university is the fact that we've got so many students who have such dire fiscal situations in terms of the debt, and you had mentioned that. So one question I have is whether you've considered anything about some of the institutions that have tried creative ways of having students pay for some of their tuition following graduation versus during it. And a second part of that question is whether there's any possibilities of indirects, grants, and other types of mechanisms that could help sustain those efforts, particularly in things like programs that are funded by the government. Thank you.
That's a great question. The answer is yes and yes. There are lots of models out there that on initial look really interesting, like reducing your tuition based on the amount of discount that you're giving, or providing a way for donors to invest in the lives of the students so that after they graduate, they pay back their loan a little bit by a little bit to the university. All of those turn out to be gimmicks, and they're around the outside of the real problem. So, for example, I did this study at my last institution. I studied 50 institutions that cut their tuition by the amount that they were discounting. And within a year, about 95% of them raised their tuition by double the amount they had cut it to come back. That is it sounds like a very easy swap to make, but there's a lot of concept of value put into the price of the institution that the discounting mentality is actually a pretty good way to go. What we need is more dollars to discount. And what we need to do that is get a value that makes sense to donors to bring in the dollars. Right now, there's so much fighting over the draw from the endowment that it could be spent 20 times over. We have to both figure out how to draw in diverse sources of revenue, new programs, new populations, new philanthropy extensions, so that we have more dollars to invest in these things. The other thing that we should look at is differential tuition pricing. So I'm going to use School of Education here, and you can, okay, good. I was afraid you were going to throw something at me when I said that. But the concept of paying $55,000 for an education degree anymore is why we're losing a ton of our students to UIC or other public institutions. That market, that ecosystem is different than computer science or business or other areas. And yet, as an institution, we tend to take one policy and apply it to everything. We are so complex that we need to figure out how to make those different. And that's one of the areas where we can get into. And that would help both with volume and with numbers, because when you look at the quality of the educational programs here in education, we're untouched. We're constantly being awarded and being creative. I think I've been to a couple of awards this year that have shown that. And yet we can't attract the students because it is more of a cost decision than anything else. And so that's different. Nursing is moving in this way a little bit now too. We need to figure out either how to describe the value of what we do before it becomes a commodity, or figure out how to price it so that it makes sense and people can attend.
Can I ask? Go.
Sure.
We have a lot of questions from our online audience. I want to make sure
Go,
we
go.
get to some of
I just
these.
have one here.
We'll do the online one.
Sounds good.
So can you please explain the center's concept better? Are you envisioning a physical space or a center that has a hub for research? And how do they come together post-COVID, where education has become remote?
So this in part will answer my concept of what work life looks like at the moment too. Our genius for so many years was community. Our genius was pulling people together to develop them academically, but also from their maturity level, getting them to explore together what it means to be in community. And while I wasn't here, but did an incredible job of getting through the crisis of COVID, I don't know that medium is our path to greatness here. I think we have to figure out how to design our engagement together again and figure out how to bring back the magic that exists and that special sauce of faculty and staff working with students in really collective ways. I see it in the work, Courtney, that you've put on this year. When all those students get together, there's a different kind of engagement that occurs. That's not to say that we have, back to my previous point, one policy that addresses all, because there are differences around, and we need to be consistent with our notion that we're going to provide radical hospitality for everybody. And so if there's a need or an opportunity to work from home because you're not student-centered, then we should be flexible in that space. And at the same time, the experience of that student, I think, needs to be more engaged in the connection to our people than it was during COVID, for sure.
My name is Heidi Hewitt, and I am the concert manager for both the Holschneider Performance Center and the DePaul School of Music, and I'm very privileged to have that role. I just want to know from you, could you share with everyone what future you see in this building?
Sure. So in college, I played bassoon, and I'm happy to perform anytime that you would need. I'll answer this in kind of broad strokes. I'm sure there's concerns of those of you who are in liberal arts or theater or arts in general, that the commodification of higher education excludes your delivery of your programs and your experiences. The thing that makes DePaul great is the diversity of the programs we have, the diversity of people that we serve. To me, that's non-negotiable. The opportunity to restructure how we see and support those programs is the critical piece to our path forward. We cannot, for example, put tubs on their own bottoms and expect us to carry forward the wonderful work that's done in the music or in theater or in art. And yet, DePaul wouldn't be DePaul without those programs. So those are non-negotiables, as is liberal arts. what we're trying to do is figure out how we match what the students want with what we know they need in order to become the citizens we hope for. And in doing that, we've got to create a financial structure that supports it all.
All right, one more online question.
Sure.
Why are course offerings for the term available only a couple weeks before enrollment opens? This can play a big role in a student's decision to remain enrolled.
I'm gonna claim ignorance on that one. However, as we get to talk about retention, as we try to solve the questions of retention, the obstacles to students returning are the things we need to change. So the largest conversation we've had about that was quarter semester system. And I'm not suggesting we reopen that debate at the moment. But these things that are hurdles to people coming back, or the processes that we've typically gone through to keep them here, are the ones we need to examine to increase the retention rate, to solve the achievement gap, and ultimately the financial situation of the university.
Hi, Mary Donovan, College of Education. I was intrigued when you said that we're in this unique space. There aren't very many members institutionally who are in this space. So I'm curious, who are those other institutions you've been keeping close eye on and getting inspired by? And for that matter, are those institutions we might be able to form alliances with somehow, going beyond
Yes.
ourselves?
That's a great question, because there's this conversation about how institutions should merge or engage other institutions. And that conversation typically starts with, there is an institution that's in real trouble that needs to attach to an institution that is designing its future. I don't think that works really well. The institutions that are designing their future, those are the conversations we want to have around the table. And so Loyola, Northwestern, UChicago, what do they have that we don't, that we could use to extend what we do, to generate the revenue we need to get out of the cow situation? To me, those are the conversations we have in Chicago. Internationally, you could look at examples of NYU, of Georgetown, which is where I worked, to see how they could extend the relationship institution to institution in spaces that matter, spaces that help with the mission, and spaces that help with the financial situation that we have.
Hi, I'm Scott Ozorowski. I work in the Study Abroad office. I'm also a member of Staff Council. I'll kind of speak on behalf of staff. I think everyone was really excited about the new vision that you've had and the energy that we've had with you coming in. And I love the fact that you've also recognized that the president is really, really difficult. We have a lot of staff who for quite a while now have been overworked, missing positions in their department, positions not able to be filled. We talk about getting through the hard time to get to the good that's ahead. Can you give some more direction to us of how we get through the hard time for the people who have been doing 2 jobs and not been compensated for it, for the people who have a position that hasn't been filled, for the people who are just taking in all that they can take in and can't take in anymore? I'm worried that with the hiring, not freeze, but slow down now, but feels like a freeze in a lot of ways, there's natural staff attrition. And if we're not hiring new positions and people are still leaving, I'm worried that after what happened with COVID and we had a brief moment of being able to rehire and now not, that it could be a really difficult year ahead of us and we lose more and more people. Is it a point where we need to stop offering certain services because we just can't provide them? Or do we compensate the people that are doing the extra work that they have been put upon them? So how do we get through this time for people in that situation, which I think are a lot of people across the university?
Yeah, I think it's everybody. Right. We've declined in student numbers, we've declined in administrative numbers, we've declined in faculty numbers. That's a reality for where we are. So I look at it this way. Without any intervention, we're doing this year after year. Without any intervention, the campus climate surveys will just continue to show that erosion of quality of life here. And yet the conversations we need to have are exactly as you mentioned. What do we provide? What don't we provide? When I first got here, I asked to stall the delivery of engineering, as an example, because I couldn't see a way to put another hungry person in line for the limited food that we had to feed everybody. And I asked Stephanie Dance Barnes and Selma to go back to the faculty and figure out what role that could play, how it could connect with other areas, how it is in service to interdisciplinary study, to design it to be effective and really important in the work we go forward. That's one. Two is we find a way to generate the new revenue, the new opportunities, so that we have investments to make, and if we prioritize the things that are important to us, the moment that revenue comes in, we know where to put it. We don't have to fight about it at that point in time. And then the second is to give ourselves some grace and forgiveness if we can't do the same kind of services that we do, or we can't do the same kind of volunteerism that we do at this moment. My goal is to build us back to where we were morale-wise a little bit ago, right? There were times when you could see dollars being invested all over the place, but to have a set of priorities for us to invest in to go through. I'm under no, I fully believe that what I've just said is going to change about 90% of the processes and policies we have on campus. It is a massive undertaking to think of this. And it's asking you to do this at a time when the reality you have is what you just described. But I look at the alternative as just untenable. And so I'll ask you to try to step on the gas one more time harder to believe that what we say we're gonna do, we're actually gonna do. We're not gonna vacate our promises going forward, but to help us prioritize the things that we need to do first in order to get us to a place where we could do what we need and want.
Okay, so I think we have one more question from our online audience, and then there's one more in person, because I know we need to wrap this up soon. So as a student from a marginalized background, one of the main issues I see on campus is the lack of resources for multicultural groups and centers at DePaul, for example, the Black Cultural Center, compared to other areas. Do you have any plans to rectify this, and how can we ensure that these cultural departments have an equitable allocation of resources that centers their experiences?
Mm-hmm. So first, we believe what's being told to us. Second, we design it into our experiences. And third, the organizational structure I just showed you, the commitments to the things that will be coming out in the Monday memo are the first steps. What I put on, what I put up there today, I told you earlier, was not the end. It's not an answer and we're done. It's the beginning of an organic process that may not have an end, but that has to be designed by working inclusively with everybody to build that community. I don't have the answer to how we do it. I have the process and the power to bring us together to design that answer. And that's what I'm promoting here today.
Hello. My name is Matthew Pearson. I'm the director of the Writing Center here at DePaul. And I have, not to gas you up or pump myself up, but I have been saying that what you said earlier about how we slept on, as in higher ed, we slept on promoting the value of our work for so long, and we let others control the conversation, and they made it seem like it's a niche thing. It's not relevant in and of itself, or it's only measured by capitalist, industry-based standards. So I'm just wondering, well, first of all, I think it'll be awesome if DePaul can play a role in pushing back on that and talking about education and the value of it for itself and how it relates to like a better world or people being more happy or less racism or, just like measurements like that. I'm just wondering, or maybe if you have any thoughts on how we can do that in ways that aren't Pollyanna or delusional or just like liberals being cool amongst ourselves, and also that address what students want the value of their education to be. Because I imagine a lot of students, particularly students from marginalized populations, they want their education to have some value and to be able to make money and for it to be practical as well.
Yep. So that's a great question, and it's better than the one I thought you were going to ask, which was you were going to critique my grammar from being from the writing school. All I can say is right now, this might feel a little Pollyannish to you. There's no action to it. There's no, except for the DEI world, there's no connection to it, but in 5 months of being here, we have begun to engage some of the most critical, pressing questions that exist here. Look at the approach to DEI I just put in place. It's not for me to solve it, it's for me to, again, create the process forward. We just on Monday engaged the graduate students around health care, health insurance, and their quality of life, the research ones with graduate assistantships. Those are problems that have been around forever, and we sit and stew in those problems instead of try to impact and change and address. That's the approach. I've been critiqued for a lot of things, but the one I have is that and I like this one, is that I have a bias for action. We need to understand the problems, believe the problems when we hear them, and then figure out a solution to them. None of us want to sit in that space. And so, how do we figure it out? Is the question you ask me. The response I give you is a process and an opportunity to be active in the design of that work going forward. The promise I give you is that as we decide our intentions, as we decide our values, that I carry those forward in the financial conversations with the board, I carry those forward in the design conversations around with SHRAC and with the work that we do on the spreadsheet side, so that it reflects the value that we have in this space.
You're done.
Oh, thank God. Thank you all. Oh, thank you. Thanks.
I have to do
You
that.
gonna take one more time? Thank you all for coming. I appreciate you. We'll be in touch soon. Thank you.